Most projects begin with confidence. There is a plan, a timeline, a clear scope, and a strong technical solution. On paper, everything appears ready. What usually goes unasked is a simpler and more uncomfortable question. What will actually change in the way people work when the system goes live? If change enablement is an afterthought, the question of its necessity arises far too late in the process. Leaders get the green light that the system is ready, yet teams hesitate. The disconnect between a finished product and actual adoption only becomes apparent at the final stage of the project. This chapter builds on the foundation set in Chapter 1 of the Change Enablement series. Where Chapter 1 explored the human factors that slow transformation, Chapter 2 shifts the focus to a practical design decision, whether change enablement is embedded from the start or added after delivery is underway. At ReVisionz, we view this as a deliberate design decision. A project can be structured around technical delivery, or it can encompass delivery alongside readiness, adoption, and the essential information people need to embrace new ways of working with confidence. Why change enablement cannot be added at the end. Several sources highlight common failure triggers specifically tied to inadequate change support, including user resistance. Approximately 50 to 70% of EDMS projects meet resistance from users due to lack of engagement and preparation. Inadequate training. Approximately 60 to 80% of organizations cite insufficient training/adaptation as a major reason for EDMS implementations to underperform. These failure rates aren't only about technical rollout issues. They reflect the system being in place, but not delivering the value expected because users don't adopt it and processes aren't changed. That's exactly the problem change enablement addresses. This impact of not having change enablement practices on each stage of a project is well studied and can also be explained per project phase. Strategy and initiation. With change enablement, the project may lose momentum or stall by 30 to 40%. This can be attributed to areas such as weak sponsorship and unclear success definition. Requirements and design. Low user involvement resulting in issues such as poor taxonomy fit may result in 20 to 40% misalignment with real work. Build and migration. The data is migrated but not trusted or used. This can be attributed to approximately 50% of post-go-live issues being people/process related. Testing and deployment. Users are unprepared for new ways of working, resulting in 60 to 70% resistance at go-live. Adoption and stabilization. 70 to 85% of projects fail to achieve sustained adoption, and people revert to shared drives and workarounds. Benefits. Realization. Only 15 to 25% realize intended business value, which can be attributed to no ownership, no reinforcement, and no metrics. The bottom line is that when change enablement is embedded across the program/project lifecycle, success rates commonly rise into the 85 to 95% range, with measurable improvements in adoption, compliance, reduced rework, and search and retrieval efficiency. Designing change into the project from day one. What built-in really means. Built-in, not bolted on, means change enablement is part of planning and execution from the start. It shapes how the project is mobilized, how risks are identified, and how progress is measured along the way. When change enablement principles are applied early, projects are better positioned to deliver outcomes that are adopted rather than simply implemented. Change activities sit inside the project rather than beside it. This approach will help influence decisions and reveal risks while there is still time to act. How? Early integration changes the trajectory. Promoting early sponsorship and alignment reduces strategy drift, allowing the project to maintain a strong, consistent direction rather than dealing with misalignment halfway through. This enables the project to respond promptly to real-world feedback, which increases agility and allows leaders to steer initiatives using leading indicators rather than lagging ones. Early relationship building is the foundation that allows change enablement to work. When trust is built at the beginning of a project, stakeholders are more willing to engage, share concerns, and adapt their ways of working long before resistance becomes visible. In the coming weeks, look out for Chapter 3, where we'll take a deeper look at why trust and relationship building are essential outcomes of early change enablement in projects. What ReVisionz does during planning and mobilization. ReVisionz starts change enablement throughout planning and mobilization. We want to prepare the organization for what's ahead, not react to opposition or misunderstanding. Early activities focus on understanding impact and readiness across the organization, which creates the foundation for targeted engagement in real conditions rather than assumptions. Key areas of focus typically include aligning leaders around a shared case for change and what success looks like beyond go live, identifying impacted groups and clarifying how work will shift by role. Early identification of internal change champions ensures the change is carried out by credible relationships that already exist within the organization. Establishing governance that supports communication and engagement. Defining roles that are changing and mapping where resistance might emerge. Developing early messaging that connects the change to daily work. A roadmap that includes human factors into technological delivery strategies. These activities support awareness and inform how communication and training should be structured later based on real impacts instead of generic assumptions. Change enablement as a living discipline. One of the most common misconceptions about change enablement is that it can be completed through a checklist. In reality, change doesn't unfold that way. Adoption moves unevenly across roles and environments. And change enablement is something that ReVisionz does as a practice because it happens all the way through a project's life cycle. As things change, so do our understanding, skills, and trust. Adoption can't just happen after training or when the system goes live. It needs to be developed over all phases of the project. From adoption signals to operational performance. Making adoption measurable. ReVisionz works with clients to define the behaviors that support business outcomes. Those behaviors are then linked to the performance indicators that leaders already monitor. When these indicators are defined early, they create a practical feedback loop. Shifts in performance prompt questions about behavior and readiness rather than reactive blame. Additionally, teams can reinforce communication, adjust training, or re-engage impacted groups before issues compound. This approach moves organizations away from assumption and toward facts. Adoption then becomes something that is observed and managed throughout execution rather than hoped for at the end. Leadership roles and shared accountability. When leaders are engaged from the beginning, they can have clarity on how roles will change and what support their teams will need. ReVisionz translates between technical delivery and operational results. That way, leaders can explain why changes are important and how they fit into daily work. This clarity builds trust and makes adoption stronger through daily decisions and interactions. Change then becomes something leaders can actively guide instead of something they inherit at project close. Redefining what success looks like. When change enablement is built in from the start, success takes on a different meaning. Projects are no longer judged solely by technical completion. Instead, success is reflected in whether people feel prepared, confident, and capable in the new environment. This shift ultimately protects return on investment that can otherwise erode quietly after delivery. Early integration also improves stability. Engagement continues throughout the project rather than peaking at kickoff and go live. Turning intent into daily practice. Change enablement works best when it's part of how projects are designed and delivered. When people are considered early, transformation becomes more durable and less disruptive. ReVisionz helps organizations build this foundation by aligning people, processes, and technology from the beginning. We bring structure to the human side of change so teams can focus on doing their work well in a new environment and minimize productivity disruption. Following the human factors introduced in Chapter 1, this chapter prepares the ground for Chapter 3, where we will focus on stakeholder engagement, ownership, and how organizations know when change is truly taking hold across people and roles. If your company is planning its next project and wants to avoid problems with adoption in the late stages, ReVisionz can help you make changes that are built in from the start. Get in touch with our team today.